Antimatter warheads detonated, vaporizing a third of the Tak invasion fleet in a blinding flash of pure annihilation. On the besieged human colony world of Noveria, a ragged cheer went up as the survivors witnessed the first glimmer of hope in months. Maybe the sneering Tak would finally take the primitive humans seriously. Commander Raymond Howard allowed himself a tight smile of grim satisfaction in the command bunker, deep beneath the surface. The insectoid aliens, led by the ruthless Overqueen Groose, had swept in like a galactic locust swarm, plundering and subjugating Earth's far-flung colonies with their superior technology. Noveria was the last free human outpost standing. Howard turned to Dr. Amara Singh, the brilliant physicist who had led the top-secret Ragnarok antimatter bomb project. They mocked our primitive weapons, but that just made the look on their carapaces all the sweeter when we unveiled what we can really do. Singh nodded grimly. Our antimatter warheads can vaporize their fleets. Immense power, but immense risk. Any containment failure would annihilate our bombers, along with the target. The bunker shuddered as Tak plasma blasts hammered the surface. Howard clenched his jaw. No choice remained. Humanity needed a game-changer or faced extinction. He gave the order to prep the rest of the antimatter arsenal and brief the strike teams. It was a desperate gambit, but the only way to cripple the bulk of the Tak war machine. Humanity refused to go quietly into the night. The fate of Noveria, and maybe their species, hinged on daring to strike back first against a foe that had long dismissed them as primitives unworthy of the stars. It was time to show the Tak the error of underestimating human ingenuity and sheer, stubborn defiance against impossible odds. Captain Raul Vasquez crept through the dimly lit corridors of the Tak colony ship Syrax. His elite strike team fanned out behind him. The faint hum of the ship's power core vibrated through the deck plates. Vasquez's grip tightened on his pulse rifle as a skittering noise echoed from an adjacent passage. He signaled a halt, raising a fist. Chitinous shadows moved in the gloom. A Tak patrol, their iridescent exoskeletons catching the wan light. Vasquez's team melted into shadowed alcoves, disappearing from view as their prototype adaptive camouflage shimmered to match the alien metal. The insectoid warriors passed obliviously, alien clicks and hisses filtering through the still air. Vasquez let out a slow breath. Stealth was essential. A direct confrontation would spell doom at this stage. They had to reach the power core undetected. Slipping silently onwards, the humans penetrated deeper into the labyrinthine ship. Bulkheads loomed claustrophobically close as they wound through narrow access ways, following the schematics hard-won by Novarian intelligence. Ahead, a sealed hatch marked their target, the Syrax's thrumming heart. Vasquez motioned to Sergeant Elena Ramirez, their demolitions expert. She knelt before the alien lock, tools probing, cracking security with deft precision. The hatch hissed open, and they entered the cavernous chamber housing the power core. Catwalks spanned a shimmering sphere pulsing with eldritch energies, the antimatter containment vessel. Ramirez unpacked the prototype bomb, a sleek silver cylinder. Sweat beaded her brow as she armed it, aligning exotic components never before tested. A challenge rang out. Vasquez spun to see Tak soldiers pouring onto the catwalks, led by an imposing warrior bearing elaborate sigils. Craxus, a name spoken in hushed dread by human survivors. The elite guards opened fire, plasma bolts searing the air. Vasquez's team scattered for cover, returning fire. Tak fell, ichor spraying, but the humans paid in blood. Vasquez saw Hudson go down, biomonitor flatlining, Singh immolated by plasma. Gritting teeth, he poured fire at Craxus, driving him back. "Ramirez, status!" he barked over the fusillade. "Armed, but detonators glitching. Manual trigger only," she reported, voice taut. Vasquez swore viciously. He squeezed off another burst and shouted, "Everyone, fall back! Get to the shuttle!" Ramirez shot him a stricken look. He clasped her shoulder. "I'll do it! Go now!" As his team fought clear, Vasquez lunged for the bomb. Craxus bore down on him, plasma sizzling. Vasquez scooped up the cylinder and sprinted for the containment sphere. Craxus's bolt took him in the thigh. Vasquez stumbled, agony searing him. The Tak loomed over him, death in glittering compound eyes. Vasquez lunged, ramming the bomb into a maintenance hatch. A swipe of his gauntlet activated a force field, sealing it within the containment vessel. Craxus hissed in fury and blasted Vasquez square in the chest. His armor held barely as he crumpled beside the sphere. With a final effort, he slammed a fist against the detonator. The world dissolved in searing white radiance. On the bridge, Admiral Zervax gaped in disbelief as the view screens flared actinic white. Damage alarms shrieked, the deck pitching beneath him. Crew stations exploded in showers of sparks as the Cyrax shuddered and screamed, reactors redlining as the unthinkable devastation consumed its heart. Zervax saw the readouts and blanched. Impossible. The primitive humans couldn't have, but cold reality burned before his eyes as the Cyrax, pride of the Tok-Tok war fleets, tore itself apart from within. Escape pods blasted frantically away as the miles-long colony ship convulsed in its death throes, spilling fire and debris as its spine snapped. Zervax sank to his knees, frozen in numb horror, watching the Cyrax shatter into 1,000 flaming splinters against the starfield. The humans had done it, struck without warning, delivered the unfathomable, and reaped terrible vengeance for their burned worlds. On Noveria, the command center erupted with a ragged cheer as the Cyrax's death bloomed across their screens. Dr. Singh pumped a fist in exultation as Commander Howard gripped the console, nucleus tightening, hardly daring to believe. They did it, Singh breathed. The Cyrax, by the numbers that would have been 20% of their war potential, out here. Howard's jaw worked. Vasquez? The team? No word yet, Singh met his eyes. They knew the odds. Howard nodded grimly. The first true victory against the Tok-Tok juggernaut, but at a heartbreaking price. Humanity stood bloodied but unbroken, and now the aliens would learn the folly of their contempt. This was only the beginning. The destruction of the Cyrax sent shockwaves through both human and Tok-Tok forces. On Noveria, Commander Howard wasted no time capitalizing on the momentum. He summoned his top officers to the command bunker, holographic displays flickering with real-time battle data. We've bloodied their nose, Howard said, gesturing to the debris field that was once the Cyrax. Now we press the advantage. General Graves, you have operational command of our fleet actions. Hit them hard, hit them fast, and don't let up. General Marcus Graves, a lean man with steel-gray hair, nodded grimly. I've already drawn up plans for a series of lightning raids on their supply depots and staging areas. We'll use the antimatter warheads judiciously. Maximum impact, minimal risk to our forces. As Graves outlined his strategy, Dr. Singh interjected, We're ramping up production of the bombs, but there are still stability issues. Use them sparingly. Howard turned to Captain Vasquez, his face etched with fatigue but eyes burning with willpower. Raul, I need your team to spearhead our ground assaults. You've seen their ship layouts firsthand. That knowledge is invaluable. Vasquez, still bearing the scars of his near death on the Cyrax, straightened. We're ready, sir. My people are itching for payback. Over the next weeks, human forces struck like lightning across the sector. Antimatter detonations blossomed against the void, vaporizing Tok-Tok outposts and supply convoys. Ground teams led by Vasquez infiltrated alien installations, gathering intel and sabotaging key systems before vanishing into the night. But the Tok-Tok were far from beaten. In her hive palace on the Tok-Tok throne world, Overqueen Grus seethed with rage. Her compound eyes flashed as she addressed her war council. These primitives dare to challenge us? She chittered. General Zaxus, you will crush this pathetic resistance. Show them the true might of the Tok-Tok Empire. Zaxus, his carapace scarred from countless battles, bowed low. It shall be done, my queen. I have studied their tactics. They are cunning but predictable. We will adapt and overcome. As Zaxus set to work, the tide of battle began to shift. Human raids met stiffer resistance. Supplies grew scarce as Tok-Tok counterattacks disrupted their logistics. Vasquez found himself pinned down more often, barely escaping devastating ambushes. In a shadowy laboratory on Earth, Dr. Singh worked feverishly to refine the antimatter bombs. Holograms swirled around her as she manipulated complex equations. "We need to increase yield while maintaining stability," she muttered to her team. "If we can't match their numbers, we must overwhelm them with sheer destructive power." Unknown to Singh, a pair of compound eyes watched from the shadows. Zira, master of disguise, recorded every detail of the human's work. As the spy slipped away to transmit the stolen data, the stakes of the conflict ratcheted higher still. On the bridge of his flagship, General Zaxxas pored over the intelligence from Zira. His mandibles clicked in satisfaction as he turned to his chief scientist. "With this information, can you develop countermeasures?" The scientist's antennae twitched excitedly. "Indeed, General. We can create shields to disperse the antimatter reaction, perhaps even a way to destabilize their warheads remotely." Zaxxas's compound eyes glittered. "Excellent. Prepare your designs. We will show these humans the folly of challenging their betters." As battles raged across the stars, Commander Howard stood before a hollow display of the front lines. Red icons representing Tak forces pushed back against the blue of human-controlled space. He turned to General Graves, concern etched on his features. "They're adapting faster than we anticipated. We need a new strategy, and fast." Graves nodded grimly. "I have an idea, but it's risky. We gather our forces for one massive push, striking directly at their core worlds. It's bold, perhaps even reckless, but it might be our only chance to end this war before it consumes us all." Howard weighed the proposal, acutely aware of the lives that hung in the balance. As alarms blared, signaling yet another Tak incursion, he made his decision. "Do it. May God have mercy on us all." As Graves outlined his bold strategy, a frantic aide burst into the command center. "Sir, urgent reports from our deep space monitoring stations." Howard turned, brow furrowed. "What is it?" "Massive antimatter detonations across Tak space. Our stealth teams, they've struck simultaneously at multiple high-value targets." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Graves whispered, "My God, we've actually done it." Holographic displays flickered to life, showing the unfolding chaos. Tak shipyards erupted in blinding flashes. Command centers crumbled, and weapons factories vanished in apocalyptic fireballs. Howard gripped the edge of the command table, nucleus tightening. "Status of our teams?" The aide shook his head. "Unknown, sir. We've lost contact with most of them." Vasquez's heart made, thinking of the brave men and women who'd volunteered for what amounted to suicide missions. He caught Howard's eye, a silent understanding passing between them. The price was steep, but the impact. On the Tak throne world, over Queen Gruss's antennae twitched violently as reports flooded in. Her most trusted advisors cowered before her wrath. "How is this possible?" she shrieked, mandibles clicking furiously. "These vermin were supposed to be crushed." General Zaxxas, his carapace gleaming under the bioluminescent light, stepped forward. "My queen, the humans have deployed antimatter weapons on an unprecedented scale. Our major production centers are in ruins." Gruss's compound eyes flashed dangerously. "Then we shall eradicate them utterly. Deploy our forces to their colony worlds. Burn them all." Zaxxas hesitated. "Your Majesty, our fleets are in disarray. We risk—" "Do it!" Gruss screeched. "I want those primitives exterminated." As Tak ships surged towards human-held systems, Dr. Singh's laboratory on Earth became a hive of activity. Technicians scrambled to analyze incoming data, refining antimatter containment protocols on the fly. Singh's eyes widened as she studied a holographic simulation. "No, they wouldn't." She turned to her team. "Get me Commander Howard, now." On the planet Novus Prime, a human colony under Tak occupation, the sky turned to fire. Plasma bolts rained down, vaporizing entire city blocks. Underground in a hidden resistance bunker, Sarah Chen, leader of the local insurgency, received a frantic transmission. "Tak ships entering orbit. Hundreds of them. They're—" The signal cut out in a burst of static. Chen turned to her ragtag group of fighters. "This is it. Plan Omega. You all know what to do." As they raced to their positions, Chen allowed herself a grim smile. The Tok were about to learn the folly of cornering a desperate enemy. Across occupied space, similar scenes played out. Human colonists, long prepared for this moment, activated hidden caches of antimatter weapons. As Tok forces closed in for the kill, they found themselves walking into carefully laid traps. The resulting carnage defied description. Entire continents were scoured clean of life. Oceans boiled away. The very fabric of reality seemed to tear as matter and antimatter collided in unimaginable quantities. In the aftermath, as the galactic battlefield fell eerily silent, General Zaxxas surveyed the devastation from his flagship. His antennae drooped in a rare display of emotion. "Madness," he chittered softly. "Complete madness." A subordinate approached, mandibles quivering. "General, we've received an offer from the humans." Zaxxas's head snapped around. "What kind of offer?" "They propose talks to end this before there's nothing left to fight over." Zaxxas considered the enormity of the situation. Billions dead on both sides, planets rendered uninhabitable. And for what? He made his decision. "Prepare my personal shuttle," he ordered, "and get me a secure channel to Overqueen Gruss. It's time to end this insanity." As Zaxxas's ship slipped away from the fleet, a new chapter in human-Tok relations trembled on the horizon. But whether it would be written in peace or blood remained to be seen. Zaxxas's personal shuttle glided towards the gleaming spires of Ixion Prime, its sleek hull reflecting the planet's twin suns. Inside, the general's compound eyes scanned tactical readouts, his antennae twitching with nervous energy. "Approaching the neutral zone, sir," his pilot announced. Zaxxas clicked his mandibles. "Proceed with caution and maintain constant scans for any surprises." As they descended through wispy clouds, the sprawling complex of the summit grounds came into view. Pristine white columns and sweeping arches echoed the architecture of a long-dead human civilization. Zaxxas felt a twinge of unease at the symbolism. On the ground, Commander Howard stood not slouching at all as the Tok shuttle touched down. Dr. Singh leaned close, whispering, "Remember, steady nerves. We can't afford to show weakness." Howard nodded imperceptibly. "Understood, but neither can we appear desperate for peace at any cost." The shuttle's ramp hissed open. Zaxxas emerged flanked by a phalanx of heavily armed guards. Their chitinous armor gleamed menacingly in the sunlight. "General," Howard said, stepping forward, "welcome to Ixion Prime." Zaxxas's antennae flicked in acknowledgement. "Commander, let us hope this summit proves productive." As the two delegations made their way towards the central amphitheater, tension crackled in the air. Captain Vasquez's hand never strayed far from his sidearm, eyes constantly scanning for threats. Among the Tok entourage, Craxus seethed silently, mandibles clenching and unclenching with barely suppressed rage. The amphitheater buzzed with the low murmur of translators as both sides took their seats. Over Queen Gruss, resplendent in shimmering bioluminescent robes, strode to the central podium. Her compound eyes swept imperiously over the gathered delegates. "We have deigned to attend this gathering," she began, her translated words dripping with disdain, "to address the recent unpleasantness caused by humanity's death throes." A ripple of anger passed through the human delegation. Howard's mind focused, but he held his tongue. Gruss continued, her antennae vibrating with barely suppressed fury. "The primitive species before us has lashed out in desperation, causing regrettable damage to our glorious empire. But make no mistake, this changes nothing. The Tok remain ascendant, and—" "With all due respect, Your Majesty," Howard interrupted, rising to his feet, "I believe you misunderstand the situation entirely." Gruss's mandibles clicked in outrage at the interruption. Howard pressed on, his voice level but filled with steel. "For decades, your empire has waged unprovoked war against our colonies. You've slaughtered billions, razed entire worlds. And yet, when humanity finally strikes back, when we show you the true cost of your aggression, you dismiss it as a mere inconvenience?" He gestured to the holographic displays flickering to life around the amphitheater, showing the devastation wrought by the antimatter strikes. Tak-Tak shipyards reduced to drifting debris fields. Once mighty fortresses cracked open like eggs. "This is the price of your arrogance," Howard continued. "The death throes you speak of have brought your empire to its knees. We are here not to beg for scraps, but to forge a lasting peace, if you have the wisdom to accept it." Gruse's compound eyes flashed dangerously. She opened her mandibles to retort, but General Zaxxas stepped forward. "Perhaps," he said carefully, "it would be prudent to approach these talks with less accusation and more pragmatism." Dr. Singh seized the moment. She rose, her voice carrying the weight of hard-won experience. "If I may, I believe we would all benefit from a reminder of history's lessons." As Singh launched into her impassioned speech about the cycles of civilizations, Howard watched the Tak-Tak delegation closely. He saw the first flickers of doubt in their eyes, the dawning realization that perhaps they had gravely miscalculated. Hours of intense negotiation followed. Tempers flared, accusations flew, but gradually, painfully, progress was made. As the talks concluded, Howard and Gruss faced each other across the negotiating table. "This interim agreement," Gruss said, her voice tight with barely held back emotion, "does not erase the crimes of humanity." Howard met her gaze unflinchingly. "Nor does it absolve the Tak-Tak of their aggression. But it's a start." As the two leaders performed the ceremonial signing, a fragile peace settled over the amphitheater. But in the shadows, Craxus's eyes burned with hatred, his claws flexing as he imagined tearing the human delegates limb from limb. The peace might have been signed, but the embers of conflict still smoldered, waiting for a chance to ignite anew. The ink on the Ixian Summit Agreement had barely dried when the first signs of trouble emerged. Commander Howard paced the dimly lit corridors of Starbase Omega, his footsteps echoing ominously. A series of encrypted transmissions flashed across his neural implant, each one more alarming than the last. "Another antimatter facility hit," he muttered, rubbing his temples. "That's the third this week." Captain Vasquez materialized from the shadows, his face etched with concern. "It's not just random attacks, sir. There's a pattern here." Howard nodded grimly. "I know. The Tak-Tak are playing us for fools." In her laboratory aboard the orbiting research station, Dr. Singh frowned at the holographic readouts before her. The antimatter containment field fluctuated dangerously, its stability compromised by an insidious computer virus. Her fingers flew across the haptic interface, desperately trying to isolate the malicious code. "No, no, no," she hissed as warning klaxons blared. "Initiate emergency purge." The lab shook violently as the antimatter was jettisoned into space, detonating in a silent, brilliant flash that momentarily outshone the nearby star. On the Tak-Tak throne world, Overqueen Gruss surveyed a hollow map of human space, her compound eyes glittering with malicious satisfaction. General Zaxxas stood at attention, awaiting her verdict. "The humans grow weak," Gruss chittered. "Their vaunted technology crumbles before our superior intellect." Zaxxas inclined his head. "Indeed, Your Majesty, our infiltrators have exceeded all expectations." "Excellent. Unleash the drones. Let us test their defenses directly." Across the fragile border between human and Tak-Tak space, waves of robotic attackers surged forward. On the colony world of New Eden, defensive batteries roared to life, filling the sky with superheated plasma. Marines in powered armor suits fought desperately to hold the line, their weapons barely scratching the relentless mechanical tide. Corporal Chen ducked behind a shattered wall, her armor's systems blaring warnings. "There's too many," she shouted into her comm. "We need reinforcements." The drones pressed their attack, lasers slicing through fortifications with surgical precision. Chen watched in horror as a building housing civilian refugees crumbled under the onslaught. In the halls of the United Earth government, chaos reigned. General Graves stood before the assembled leadership, his voice dripping with barely concealed disdain. "Howard's weakness has brought us to the brink of annihilation," he declared. "We need decisive action, not failed diplomacy." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Howard, watching the proceedings via holofeed, clenched his fists in frustration. They're playing right into the Tok-Tok's hands, he growled. Vasquez placed a steadying hand on his commander's shoulder. What's our next move, sir? Howard's eyes hardened with determination. We fight fire with fire. Get Dr. Singh on a secure line. It's time for Plan Omega. Deep beneath the surface of a nameless asteroid, Howard, Vasquez, and Singh huddled around a workbench. Schematics for a device of terrifying power flickered in the air between them. Are you certain about this? Singh asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The consequences... Howard nodded grimly. We're out of options. If we don't act now, humanity is finished. Vasquez studied the plans, his expression a mixture of awe and horror. A singularity bomb. My God! As they worked feverishly to bring their daring plan to life, the fabric of space-time itself seemed to hold its breath. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, teetering on the edge of unimaginable destruction. Destruction. As Howard, Vasquez, and Singh toiled in secret, the fruits of their labor rippled across the galaxy. On the Tok-Tok throne world, Over-Queen Gruss's antennae twitched violently as she absorbed the latest intelligence report. Her compound eyes flashed with terrifying fury. Singularity weapons? She hissed, mandibles clicking rapidly. Impossible! General Zaxxas shifted uneasily. Our sources are reliable, Your Majesty. The humans have developed technology capable of... I know what singularity weapons do, Gruss snapped, her bioluminescent robes pulsing in angry crimson. Summon the War Council. Immediately. Within minutes, the chamber filled with Tok-Tok military leaders. Among them slunk Craxus, his once proud carapace now bearing the scars of his humiliation at Syrax. His eyes burned with hatred as he took his place at the table. Gruss's voice cut through the nervous chittering. The humans have crossed a line. We must neutralize this threat before they can deploy it. Zaxxas's antennae drooped. Your Majesty, perhaps we should consider diplomatic... Silence, Gruss thundered. Your weakness has brought us to this precipice, Zaxxas. No, we need bold action. Craxus stepped forward, mandibles spread in a grotesque approximation of a smile. I have a plan, Your Majesty, one that will crush the humans once and for all. As Craxus outlined his strategy, even the hardened generals recoiled, but Gruss's eyes gleamed with approval. Make it so, she ordered. Aboard the secret asteroid base, alarms blared. Howard's neural implant flashed urgent warnings as he sprinted down a corridor, Vasquez at his heels. How did they find us? Vasquez shouted over the cacophony. Howard skidded to a halt before a reinforced door. Doesn't matter. We have to reach Singh. The lab was chaos. Scientists frantically purged data systems as Singh hunched over a workbench, her hands steady despite the pandemonium. It's not ready, she said without looking up. We need more time. A thunderous explosion rocked the facility. Howard steadied himself against a console. Time's up, Doctor. We have to... The far wall disintegrated in a shower of molten metal. Through the breach poured a nightmarish horde of Tok-Tok warriors, their chitinous armor glistening with an oily sheen that seemed to bend light itself. Cloaking tech, Vasquez breathed, raising his pulse rifle. Gods help us! Howard's weapon barked, downing the lead attacker. Singh! Prime the device! As Singh's fingers danced across the controls, a familiar figure materialized from the shadows. Craxus, his eyes glowing with cybernetic enhancements, advanced with deadly purpose. You will not deny us victory, the Tok-Tok commander snarled. Howard emptied his magazine into Craxus's chest, but the rounds simply ricocheted off an energy barrier. Vasquez charged forward, engaging Craxus in brutal hand-to-hand combat. Singh's voice cut through the chaos. It's done! But the containment field... Time seemed to slow as Craxus's bladed appendage plunged into Singh's abdomen. Howard lunged forward, dragging the scientist away from her impaler. Blood bubbled from her lips as she pressed a final command. Run, she whispered. The air itself seemed to tear as a pinprick of absolute darkness bloomed. Howard hefted Singh's limp form over his shoulder, sprinting for the exit. Vasquez provided covering fire as Craxus howled in fury. The singularity expanded with terrifying speed, consuming everything in its path. Howard and Vasquez dove through a closing blast door, the void nipping at their heels. Behind them, Craxus's screams were abruptly silenced as he and his soldiers vanished into oblivion. The two men stumbled out of the disintegrating facility, Singh's body growing cold between them. As their emergency shuttle lifted off, Howard watched in stunned silence as the asteroid and everything on it collapsed into nothingness. In orbit above the Tak homeworld, Overqueen Gruss received the news of Craxus's failure. Her compound eyes narrowed as she contemplated the stakes of this new phase of the war. The singularity collapsed in on itself, leaving nothing but an expanding cloud of debris where the secret asteroid base once stood. Howard stared at the view screen, his face ashen. Singh's lifeless body lay nearby, a stark reminder of the price they'd paid. Vasquez broke the heavy silence. "We need to move, sir. The Tak will be hunting us." Howard nodded mechanically, setting course for the nearest human outpost. As they fled, encrypted transmissions flooded their comms. The news spread like wildfire. Humanity had developed singularity weapons. For a brief moment, it seemed the tide of war might turn, but Overqueen Gruss was not so easily cowed. On the Tak throne world, Gruss paced before her war council, mandibles clicking furiously. "This changes nothing," she hissed. "The humans have shown their hand too soon." Her eyes fell on a shadowy figure in the corner. "Valzok, you have served me well in the past. It's time to sow chaos among our enemies." The cunning advisor bowed low. "As you command, Your Majesty." Valzok's work was swift and insidious. He exploited existing tensions within human leadership, whispering lies and half-truths that spread like a virus. General Graves, long resentful of Howard's influence, became his unwitting pawn. In the halls of the United Earth government, Graves stood before a hastily convened tribunal. "Commander Howard's reckless actions have brought us to the brink of total war," he declared. "We must remove him from command immediately." Howard watched the proceedings via secure link, his fists clenched in helpless rage. "They're making a terrible mistake," he growled. But the die was cast. Within hours, Howard found himself stripped of rank and authority. Vasquez and his elite teams were sidelined, deemed compromised by their association. Gruss seized the moment. Massive Tak warships decloaked in orbit around key human worlds. The skies lit up with searing energy weapons as orbital platforms crumbled under the assault. On New Eden, Corporal Chen watched in horror as the planetary defense grid failed. "Incoming!" she shouted as the first Tak dropship screamed through the atmosphere. The invasion had begun. Howard refused to stand idle. He gathered a corps of loyal officers and soldiers, establishing a hidden base in the ruins of an abandoned mining outpost. "We may not have official sanction," he told his ragtag group, "but we're humanity's best hope now." They struck from the shadows, bloodying the Tak advance through hit-and-run tactics. Howard's strategic genius shone through, even with limited resources. Vasquez, disgusted by Graves's capitulation, soon abandoned his post to join Howard's resistance. "Reporting for duty, sir," he said with a grim smile. As they planned their next strike, fate intervened. A battered shuttle limped into their hidden hangar, its lone occupant stumbling out. Howard's eyes widened in recognition. "Dr. Ryder?" Elena Ryder, Singh's protege, looked up with haunted eyes. "Commander Howard, I need your help." Howard listened intently as Ryder explained her escape from a Tak-occupied research station. More importantly, she revealed the existence of Singh's final project, a weapon of unimaginable power. "A doomsday device," Ryder whispered, "capable of generating an artificial singularity without safeguards." Howard's mind raced with the implications. "Where is it?" "Hidden, but I can take you there." They mounted a daring raid, punching through Tak lines to reach the secret lab. As Vasquez's team held off waves of chitinous warriors, Howard and Ryder raced to activate the device. Alarms blared as Tak forces breached the outer defenses. Howard's fingers flew across the control panel, arming the Singularity Core. A high-pitched whine filled the air as reality itself began to warp around them. Howard! Vasquez's voice crackled over the comm. We can't hold them much longer. Ryder looked up from her calculations, fear etched across her face. It's not stabilizing. Someone needs to stay behind to maintain the field integrity. Howard met her gaze, understanding passing between them. Get to the extraction point, he ordered. I'll finish this. As Ryder sprinted for safety, Howard turned back to the controls. The lab shook violently as TOC weapons fire intensified. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what came next. Vasquez, he said into his comm, it's been an honor. His finger hovered over the final activation switch. Howard's finger descended on the activation switch. In that instant, reality twisted. The lab, the TOC forces, even Howard himself, all were consumed by the ravenous maw of an artificial singularity. Aboard the extraction shuttle, Ryder watched in stunned silence as the facility collapsed into nothingness. Vasquez gripped the controls, his knuckles tightening. It's done, he said, voice hollow. But their sacrifice came too late. On Earth, the sky burned. Massive TOC warships rained destruction upon humanity's homeworld. Orbital defense platforms crumbled under the onslaught, their wreckage streaking through the atmosphere like falling stars. General Graves, realizing his terrible mistake, could only watch in horror as the planet he'd sworn to protect was engulfed in flame. His final transmission, choked with regret, cut off abruptly as a TOC energy lance vaporized the command bunker. In the aftermath, an uneasy quiet settled over the galaxy. The TOC invasion force had been decimated by Howard's final act, but humanity paid a devastating price. Billions were dead, Earth a smoldering ruin. Ryder found herself thrust into a pivotal role. With Howard gone, she alone possessed the knowledge to harness singularity technology. Vasquez's battle-hardened teams rallied around her, providing security and tactical support. They established a hidden base within an antimatter production facility on a distant moon. As Ryder worked tirelessly, pushing the boundaries of physics, Vasquez's strike teams conducted hit-and-run raids against TOC outposts. We need a game-changer, Ryder muttered, poring over simulations. Her eyes widened as a new possibility crystallized. Captain, I need to show you something. Vasquez studied the holographic display, brow furrowed. An antimatter cascade? I don't understand. Ryder's fingers danced across the controls, manipulating variables. Not just a cascade, a phase shift. If my calculations are correct, we could trigger a reality-altering event. To what end? Vasquez asked, a hint of skepticism in his voice. Ryder met his gaze, her eyes blazing with commitment. To end this war, permanently. She outlined her audacious plan, Operation Ouroboros. They would infiltrate Xyraxes, the half-constructed TOC ring world, and use its contained singularity to ignite an antimatter genesis event. Vasquez nodded grimly. I'll assemble our best teams. We'll need every advantage we can get. As Ryder refined her calculations, Vasquez's forces prepared for the most crucial mission of their lives. Weapons were cleaned and checked, antimatter charges carefully primed. The assault on Xyraxes was chaos incarnate. Vasquez's vanguard punched through the outer defenses, carving a path for Ryder's science team. TOC warriors swarmed from every direction, their chitinous armor gleaming under the harsh lights of the megastructure. Ryder sprinted down a twisting corridor, following the pull of the artificial gravity well. Behind her, the sounds of battle echoed, the staccato of human pulse rifles mixing with the high-pitched whine of TOC energy weapons. We're running out of time, Vasquez shouted over the comms. Their reinforcements are inbound. Ryder burst into the central chamber, her breath catching at the sight before her. A roiling mass of absolute darkness hung suspended in a crackling energy field, the contained singularity at the heart of Xyraxes. She worked feverishly, fingers flying across alien consoles as she initiated the sabotage protocols. Antimatter charges were carefully positioned around the chamber, each one a potential key to unraveling reality itself. Vasquez's team poured into the room, sealing the entrance behind them. Whatever you're going to do, he said, blood seeping from a gash above his eye, do it now. Ryder took a deep breath, her hand hovering over the final command. In that moment, she saw the weight of two civilizations balanced on a knife's edge. With a silent prayer, she activated the sequence. The chamber erupted in blinding light as antimatter collided with the singularity. Reality itself seemed to stretch and tear, the fabric of space-time unraveling before their eyes. Vasquez turned to Ryder, a question forming on his lips. But before he could speak, their very atoms began to dissolve, drawn into the cosmic maelstrom they had unleashed. As consciousness faded, Ryder caught a fleeting glimpse of something beyond comprehension. Infinite realities collapsing, folding in on themselves like a cosmic Ouroboros. And in that final moment, she understood the true magnitude of what they had set in motion. The universe held its breath, poised on the precipice of a new genesis. The universe held its breath, poised on the precipice of a new existence. Then, in an instant that stretched across eternity, reality unraveled. Silence engulfed the cosmic void, only to be shattered by a crescendo of quantum fluctuations. Like sparks igniting a primordial inferno, these anomalies flared across the emptiness, coalescing into intricate patterns that defied comprehension. Within this maelstrom of rebirth, fragments of consciousness stirred. Shards of memory and identity wove themselves into the fabric of nascent existence. Among these reforming minds, Captain Raul Vasquez's psyche struggled to reassert itself. Images assaulted his emerging awareness. Antimatter flames consuming chitinous armies, the faces of fallen comrades frozen in eternal anguish. And finally, the blinding flash as Ryder's device tore apart the very foundations of reality. The magnitude of their actions crashed over him like a tidal wave of cosmic proportions. They had succeeded in ending the war, but at a cost beyond imagining, the complete erasure and rewriting of all that had ever been. As Vasquez's consciousness stabilized, he became aware of other entities taking shape around him. At first formless, they gradually solidified into sleek, draconic forms. Iridescent scales shimmered between states of matter and energy, a visual symphony that defied description. With a jolt of recognition, Vasquez realized these beings were the reborn essences of the Tok Empire. His combat instincts flared, neural pathways priming for a conflict that no longer held meaning. Before he could act, a resonant call pierced through his very being. It carried with it profound sorrow and wisdom that transcended mortal understanding. In that moment, the boundaries between Vasquez and his former enemies dissolved. Their shared consciousness expanded, encompassing eons of history and evolution. He witnessed the Tok's journey from primordial awareness to technological godhood, and their subsequent fall into xenophobic brutality. Alongside this, he felt the raw desperation that had driven humanity to unthinkable extremes in their fight for survival. As revelations cascaded through the Gestalt, a deeper truth emerged. They were all part of an eternal cosmic cycle. Upstarts rising to overthrow stagnant regimes, each revolution sparking new ideas before the pattern repeated anew. Vasquez's human essence merged with this sublime awareness. His individuality dissolved, expanding toward the infinite. Yet one fragile connection to his past remained. A single tear formed in the vastness, refracting the totality of existence. Within that glistening droplet resided the last essence of Elena Ryder, the brilliant mind whose creation had reshaped reality itself. As Vasquez's consciousness intertwined with this final fragment of humanity, he imparted the Gestalt's profound wisdom. The teardrops shimmered with kaleidoscopic brilliance, then slowly dissipated into the energies of the newborn universe. Vasquez's awareness merged fully with the cosmic theogony, his final thoughts and acceptance of humanity's role as catalyst for a greater truth. As the birth pangs of a fresh reality swept outward, ancient hatreds were washed away. In their place, new paradigms of existence began to take shape, ones founded on humility and reverence for the unfathomable complexities of creation. The cycle of conflict that had defined their previous incarnations gave way to something profoundly different. As consciousness coalesced once more, it carried with it the hard-won wisdom of civilizations reborn.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, Please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.